What's up, guys? Derek with Team Evolution, Rush of Ikorr, coming to you with my upgraded Snake deck profile, the 2.0 version of the deck that I was able to win the remote regional with. And man, I am excited to bring this deck to you. This is still my favorite deck of the game. It got so many powerful cards, and unfortunately, because of that, it is a very difficult deck to build now because there are so many options for the deck. But real quick, before we get into the profile, again, I appreciate any watches on any of my videos. I love this game. I've been having so much fun with it. So is my teammate, and we just want to keep pushing it, promoting it, showing deck profiles, showing you guys cool combos, videos talking about different aspects of the game, which we definitely have more of that coming. But I'm just happy to be finally getting a lot of my deck profiles out there for set 2. And this is another one. This is an upgraded version of Snake. So with that being said, give me a like, give me a sub if you appreciate the content. If you're new to the game, welcome. And if you're looking for decks to play, we got a ton of them on the profile. Obviously, with set 2 out, it changes a lot. There's so many different things that you can do in the game right now, but we'll get to that in the future. For now, let's talk about upgraded Snake, the yellow-black serpent that is an incredibly punishing deck. This is my favorite deck because it utilizes the 2 colors that I enjoy the most right now, which is yellow and all of the Egyptian rebirth cards, and black, which has Reanimate and a ton of very, very powerful boss cards. On top of that, this avatar is basically a just recycling machine, which is part of why it is such a difficult deck to play. It's a control deck, another type of control deck. A lot of decks in this game are control-based, which actually kind of makes this game very fun. I was telling that to my teammate the other day when we were testing, like, hey, like the back and forth in this game is crazy. Like, even though we're not playing on the opposing turn, the back and forth is just so crazy. They're just always back and forth in this game, which is great. It makes the games fun. It's not just, combo out and win. There's actual gameplay that you got to kind of work with, which is nice. But yeah, if you haven't seen my deck profile for the first, or for my profile when I won the remote regional, I would go check it out. Obviously, it's kind of irrelevant because we're in set 2 now, but just to get an idea of the changes that I made. But this deck has been very hard to construct. I've been working on this deck nonstop since set 2 came out, and it's been very hard figuring out what I want and what I don't want in the deck. But I've kind of discovered what I feel the deck should be leaning towards right now, and I think that's kind of helped with the identity and kind of what to take in and out of the deck. So with that being said, let's kind of just dive into it. Obviously, Snake, such a fun avatar. Its avatar ability is to shuffle a card from your graveyard into your deck and then draw a card. Its rush ability is allied champions gain when this champion dies, summon it, but void it the next time it would leave the battlefield until the end of this turn. So technically the rush ability kind of just gives everything reanimate until the end of the turn, which we almost never use, by the way. It's mostly the regular ability to recycle cards is what we end up doing, which is great because you can recycle anything, spells, good champions with good infusions, and to get a draw off of it is huge anyways. I mean, we basically have an avatar that says pay to draw a card, but you get to recycle a really good card that you've already played. So it's a very, very, very good avatar ability for what it is. So with that being said, a couple things I want to talk about before I actually get into the profile. I had this deck at 50 cards at one point because I couldn't decide what to play and what to take out. And I thought I had to play all these different cards because I could, because we can mill and foresee and do all these different things. But I've trimmed it down to 43. And I think 43 is fine because it's only 3 extra cards over the 40 that we don't really necessarily, it's not gonna like ruin anything. The deck still feels very consistent because we've trimmed a lot of the like nonsense cards. But this deck is very much utilizing Pythia. This was the other reason why I felt like this deck got a huge boost is because Pythia and another card in the deck. Because the way this deck struggled the first time around is I could control like crazy, infinitely, but winning the game was hard because a lot of times I struggled to actually gain the Ikorr. With Pythia, we now have the ability to do that without really struggling, which is nice. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with the deck now. So having her and a couple other cards in the deck on top of just playing the routine control of just like blowing everything up and stunning everything and stuff is still there. It's just now we have an extra win condition that makes everything cheaper. And yeah, a 2-cost 0/7 that makes our spells cost 1 less and can basically gain us Ikorr every turn. Broken. I'm a huge fan of this card. It is my favorite card in the game right now, and it's definitely, in my opinion, probably the best card in set 2 for sure. We don't have a meta, but it is a meta warping card to say the least. So this deck has been built now with the thought of, like, my previous version was, let's just mill a bunch of cards as blindly as possible to try and set up our graveyard. Whereas now we can kind of rely a little bit more on just looking at the top card, milling a specific card, getting a specific card in the grave when we need it, type of thing. We're definitely not hyper milling like the first time, is my point. So keep that in mind. So starting off, we have 2 Stargazer still, a yellow staple, of course, with Foresight, which is fantastic because it works really well with Pythia. So of course we can play this plus Pythia on the first turn of the game and secure an Ikorr on the first turn of the game, which almost no one's going to be able to deal with, because playing a Pythia on turn 1 that has 7 health, not many decks can deal with that. So if any, for that matter. So yeah, this card is obviously a huge part of the deck still. Then I played Toad Wahi at 1, and we have the Vision of the Oracle on this one now. So the biggest thing with this card, we have a lot of ways that we can reuse it, which is why I'm not playing 2, because the card can't raid, it can't really attack, it doesn't really do anything. It's just there to help us foresee cards. And because it is a reanimate, it's just basically saying foresee 4 cards, potentially, depending on, you know, when it dies and comes back. But yeah, again, we're not hyper milling, so I don't really need to stick the one that mills 3 on this like before. We can just play this, foresee some cards, and utilize it as kind of more a utility card. I still have the Fierce Alex with Kusanagi on this. It's a great 1-drop. You know, now that we're not hyper milling, drawing cards isn't the worst thing in the world. So having a 1-drop that can stun and draw us a card is great. Simple as that. Then we're playing 2 Venomous Asp. Pretty standard still, one with the reanimate. The other one I stuck Apollo's Bow, which is just another foresee 2 and scrap 1. And then if I scrap the spell, I get to deal 2 damage to something, which is really nice. And I can kind of reuse this over and over again if I want to with, like, my rebirth cards and stuff. Or obviously just recycle it with my Snake's ability, which is fantastic. And then for some new cards, we're playing 2 Macaw Owls, part of the new reanimate birds that Black got this expansion, which are fantastic. I really need to get some fracture foils of these, but for now I got 2 red borders, which is fine. But we have 2 really powerful infusions on here, and on top of that, this card's ability is nuts. This card is so good. So it's a 1/1/1 with reanimate, and its action is that you can pay 2 to return this champion from your graveyard or void back to your hand, which is crazy. The Hermes Lyre just gives us free rating for cheap that we can use over and over. And then obviously the next one, we have the Tressus of Nephthys. So when it dies, we get to add any card from our graveyard back to our hand, a spell or whatever, which is huge, because if this card is voided, guess what? I can just pay 2, bring it back, resummon it. So it's like a 3-cost, add a card from my graveyard to my hand over and over and over throughout the course of the game. So it's very good. Next up, we have 2 Skull Owls, and this one we have the Curse of the Kami, which it costs 1 less but stuns itself, so it's a 1-drop, which is important. It's a reanimate, and on death, it deals 1 damage to target opposing champion. So it's a 1/2/2 that when it dies, it deals a damage. It's going to come back. It's kind of like having Hamayumi on it, but backwards. It's like a backwards Deer Wahi in a way, and a little bit weaker, but not by much. But there's a reason I have this with costing 1, and I'll get to that once we move on. But yeah, just another good cheap 1-drop that we can kind of utilize. 2 Shooting Owls. So on this one, we have the Canopic Jars. Now this one, you can stick a lot of things to this. It's a 2/2/1 with Reanimate and Swift. There's a ton of good infusions that you can play on this because it's a 2-pip. You know, you could play the new one that gives it +2 attack. So it's a 2/4/1 that can attack immediately, which means you're basically going to be able to run almost anything over. It's very good. But on this one, we stuck target player scraps 2. And I did that because if I ever do need to mill some cards, I can. But I can also mill my opponent, which is a whole new element of control with this deck. So playing this, making my opponent mill 2 cards, and then it dies and comes back, and I make my opponent mill 2 cards again is ridiculous. So a 2-cost make my opponent mill 4 cards, sure. And the fact that I can utilize this multiple times because of other cards in the deck, sure, I'll do that. It's very good. And then I'm still playing 1 Deer Wahi. The only reason I'm still playing one of these is because obviously I have a lot of really cheap reanimates, and I wanted to have more reanimates in the deck. Realistically, I probably don't actually need this card. I'm maybe just better off playing another Toad Wahi with Foresee, to be honest. But it's just another good 2-drop that has 5 damage attached to it, which is just nice. At any point in time, plus the Hamayumi can come in and deal with a demon if I needed to, which is the other reason why I have it in here. And because I can kind of abuse reanimates a lot, I felt like one copy was fine. So that's why we're just sticking with that. And then we have the 2 Scheming Vizier, still with the Curious Relic, which is to draw 3, stack 2, and then, you know, potentially hand fix or mill another card or something. But this is mostly just to have good stuff to work with on the hand fixing side if we have a card in our hand that we don't want in our hand. But also, obviously, with Pythia, right? This lets us just set up for Pythia. So we have to have as many options for Pythia as possible. 1 Ritual Practitioner. I really wanted this card to be at 2 in the deck, but I'm not going to lie. I don't really want 2 of it because you can recycle it, and you have to have enough cards in the in the void for it to really matter. So I think 1 is still perfectly fine. We have 2 Wahi Watcher with the Mystic Ankh. Obviously, there's a ton of cards I wanted to stick on this. There's so many good infusions that you could play on this card, but the 6 health is just too good. A 3/1/6 where we have so many really good cheap reanimates to get back to our hand. The 6 health is just hard to beat. Again, there's a lot of cards that we could play on this, but that extra health is just too good. So I personally still like the extra health because it just makes it more sticky, and it's a magnet for removal. And if your opponent can't remove it, the advantage that it gives you in terms of just card advantage is too good to not have. And then the last infused card is a 1 Enraged Minotaur. So obviously we don't know what location decks are going to look like. There's a lot of decks that can play locations this set. So this is Enraged Minotaur. It has Swift, summons, destroys a location. So if anything, I'm killing something, but potentially taking out locations as well. And then I have the Shroud of Yomi attached to it, which means I can pay 2 to return it to my hand, or from my graveyard to my hand. So basically, if I'm playing a location deck and this is sitting in the grave, who cares? But if I am playing a location-based deck, I can just essentially have infinite location removal at my disposal, because at any point in time in the late game, I can just pay 2 and come out and pop a location, which is really good. Obviously, it costs a lot. You know, maybe this is something better to have on something else, but I get Swift with this. So the fact that I can pop a location and then potentially take out a champion with it simultaneously, it's not bad. So I'm kind of rolling with that right now to have some sense of location removal. And then for all of the Fabled, so we're obviously playing 2 Pythias, pretty standard. 1 Toth. Thought about playing 2, but I think 1 is still fine. 1 Anubis. I would still play Anubis in this deck because it mills cards, and it's just good against any of the other like graveyard-based decks. So why not? And then obviously our big 3, Yamada, Oni, and Simmel. I took out Kamisats. I took out Chalk. I took out a bunch of the other just big champions that we don't need, because we can get these in the graveyard at any time, and these are really the only ones that we need. We don't need any of the other fillers. A lot of those cards were only played before in the Hyper Mill version because I needed a higher chance of getting something good in the grave that I could reborn. With this version, you don't really need to do that. You're not just trying to get cards in the grave, because you can get very specific ones in the grave. So trimming the higher cost cards down and focusing more on the lower end of things, I think just made it feel way better. So that's it for all the champions, pretty straightforward. Next, we are playing a copy of Delphi. Card's great. Looks at the top 4 cards, foresees 4, then you basically can add a spell to your hand, but it lets you see 4. So if you get this off 1 or 2 or even 3 times with Pythia, it's just so good. And you get to just dig for all these good spells, for all your reborn spells, for your removal spells. Like, it's just so good. And then I'm also playing, obviously, 1 Xibalba, which is just another insane part to this deck. Whenever a champion is summoned from anywhere other than a player's hand, store an Ikorr on this location, and then action, secure 1. So it is a black version of Pyramid that just is abused by all the rebirth spells that you have and the reanimates, which is crazy. It's so insane. Now you'll notice I'm not playing any champions that like activate locations or stuff like that, and I'm not really playing anything to like turbo this out. Like, I guess there's a world where if you wanted to, you could play 2 copies of this with 2 like Yamabushis and Contemplate Impermanence and like try and just get Xibalba online as quickly as possible. But the thing is, this deck controls so well that you don't even need to do that, because you get to a point where with all the foreseeing and some of the milling and just drawing cards, once this is online, you're going to, between this and Pythia, you're going to be able to gain Ikorr very quickly. So you don't really need to play that direction. You can if you want to, but I think it kind of actually makes it worse, just personal opinion. You'll obviously notice I'm not playing Chichen Itza anymore. You don't really need to. Chichen Itza is good, but when you have your avatar ability, paying 2 to just do that is fine. And then I'm also not playing Royal Necropolis anymore because you just don't need to. Your big cards having reanimate doesn't matter. So Necropolis, and it's also expensive, so you just don't need to. I think these locations are way better in both aspects. Chichen Itza's still very good, but I just don't think you need it. Let me put it that way. But I could argue playing still a copy of it or something, but I just don't think it's super necessary. I also wanted to play Homer, but I didn't like the idea of milling some of my cards because I don't have a lot of Fabled in this version, like Fabled cards. So I decided to not play Homer. Spells. 2 Oracular Visions, pretty standard. 2 Descended Yomi. This is the reason why we don't have to play Hypermill anymore. We have a Foolish Burial / Entomb in the game that allows us to just, oh yeah, I'm just going to put Yum Semmel in the grave, or I'm just going to put Oni in the grave. Sure. Sure. We're just going to put what we want. Obviously, 2 Burn Incense Ritual allows us to just recycle everything. 2 Bearing of Flames. Whew, man, this card is crazy. That's why it works so well with all the reanimates. So as an additional cost, you got to sacrifice a champion, but you get to deal 5 damage to an opposing champion, and then deal any excess to a champion adjacent. Insane that this card costs 2. This card should cost 3, but it costs 2, so which is fine. We can just basically manipulate our reanimates, and then, you know, yeah. Which, by the way, fun interaction with the Trephthis of Nephthys Macaw. If you play this and you blow up the Trephthis of Nephthys Macaw, right, Macaw's going to go to the grave because it was sacrificed. Bearing of Flames will obviously resolve. So you have to deal 5 damage and all that stuff, and then goes to the graveyard. And then the Trephthis of Nephthys will trigger, and you can just add the Bearing of Flames back to your hand. So this card's insane. This card's such a good, like, one of the best things this deck could have asked for against the aggro decks. Like, because this deck struggled against the early turns against aggro and other decks, which is why I used to play like Young Minotaur with Swift and stuff like that, which you just don't need anymore. You just don't need those cards. And like same with Tengu. I'm not playing Tengu anymore because it just didn't really do anything to the game plan. It was just kind of there. But now you just don't have to do that. Now you can just kind of play with a lot of these early cheap cards, have stuff like this, and then just, you know, foresee, get stuff in the grave. Once you get to that point where you can reborn stuff, yeah, it's just really good. 2 Essence of the Dolphin. Again, another ridiculous card for this deck because when it's milled, you get to add a spell back to your hand, which is great from your grave. But with Foreseeing, if you also get a card on the bottom of your deck, then you can, you know, try and secure an extra Ikorr with this, which is also really good. And then obviously 2 Cursed, 2 Osiris Reborn, pretty standard. And then still the 1 copy of the Great End. Because I do think 1 massive major removal spell on top of everything else that you can still manipulate and recycle is very good. So that's it. That is the Snake 2.0. I gotta admit, it plays very smooth. It plays way better than the first version, believe it or not. I think this version would beat the other version. Just not even because of Pythia and Xibalba. Like, those 2 are really good, but this just feels more cohesive. It feels more consistent instead of having to just blindly mill cards. Which I really, really like. It's 43 cards. I mean, you can kind of play this deck at whatever. You could play this at 50, you could play it at 40, you could play it at 45. I mean, the deck being able to just kind of cycle through stuff. Like, even now, I could consider, you know, upping it 2 more cards and sticking in, like, another Toad Wahi that foresees, and then, like, 1 other card or something that draws or does something, right? Like, you could do that. This is just where I settled on it, so... yeah, that's it. Still my favorite deck in the game. I think this version is definitely very, very powerful. I'm not going to lie. I feel like it's in the tier 1 category. I think you just have too much removal, too much stun, too much control. And then now you have a way to win the game in the middle of doing all that between Pythia and Xibalba, which is huge. So yeah, if you like this deck or you want to give it a shot or you really, really like control-based decks, I would look at this one for sure. I know it's got a lot of cards in it that are kind of tough to get a hold of, but you can definitely still play around with that. You know, Great Ends are good substitution if you don't have a Yum Semmel. Onis and Yamadas are still really good to just control the board state. Yeah, not really much else to say outside of that. There's a ton of alternatives. So, yeah, keep watch. We got more coming. And with that being said, Team Evolution out.